Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of combat sports. A lot of news has been going on in the world of combat sports lately. We just we got an UFC 299 coming up, featuring Sean O'Malley. We got, of course, in the wrestling world, we had Sting's retirement, and a lot of news regarding WrestleMania. But in the world, and just recently, we had a boxing main event in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, featuring Francis Ngannou and Anthony Joshua, in which Anthony Joshua proved once again that an MMA fighter should not step into the ring, the boxing ring, with a professional boxer, especially of a former world heavyweight champion. Anthony Joshua knocked Francis Ngannou the fuck out. But anyway, hey Lisa, what's going on? With regards to this news, Netflix has announced that they will be showing on July the 20th an exhibition match between Jake Paul, the internet boxing sensation from Thriller, who's 21 and 1. That's his record. I think he has a few knockouts. But he's 21 and 1. He lost Tommy Fury. He lost that one fight of a few years back. He has a pretty good record, but he'll be taking on 57-year-old Mike Tyson. Yes, Iron Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, is coming out of retirement to face a YouTuber. Now, my opinion of this fight. Mike Tyson is 57 years old. Jake Paul is 27 years old. That means, for those people that know mathematics, there is a 30-year difference between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. But on the other hand, Mike Tyson is Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is not an ordinary man. Mike Tyson is a motherfucker that used to knock people out within minutes when he was on the top in the late 80s and early 90s. And were it not for his personal proclivities and his prison time, other boxers that became high-level boxers in the 90s would not have been able to rise to that occasion. George Foreman would have not have been able to come out of retirement. Tommy Morrison wouldn't have did nothing back in the middle 90s, because as soon as Tyson got out of retirement, got out of jail in 1995 and came back to the game, he came back to dominate once again. He was tearing motherfuckers up like he tore them up in the late 80s and early 90s. His punching power is something that we have never seen before in boxing, at least in the modern era. Of course, we know that many people compare him to Jack Dempsey. That was the boxer that he took the most inspiration from. Mike Tyson is a very knowledgeable boxer as well. He knows pretty much all of the history of boxing. He's seen many of the great fighters. He came under the learning tree of his trainer, Cus D'Amato, who trained him to emulate those type of boxers, especially those type of fighters, especially the power punchers like Sonny Liston, George Foreman, and Jack Dempsey. Jake Paul, I haven't really seen a lot of Jake Paul's fights. The people that I know that he's fought are people like Nate Robinson, a basketball player, Ben Askren, an MMA fighter, Tyron Woodley, another MMA fighter. Uh, Anderson Silva, another MMA fighter. Nate Diaz, another MMA fighter. He's been in the and Tommy Fury, a, the first boxer that he fought, and that's the one loss he has. He really hasn't been in the ring with a lot of boxers at all. You know what I mean? So he gets into the ring with Mike Tyson, it might be trouble for him. The only way he could beat Mike is if he outlasts him. If he outlasts him, he has a chance to beat Mike because one, Mike in his prime was never a good long-term fighter. He go more than a couple rounds, he gets a little nervous, and then he starts to panic, and we know what he did to Evander Holyfield in 1997. Mike was never a fighter like that would go the distance. He was never a stamina fighter. He was the type of fighter, he'd get into the ring, he'd try to knock you out really fast and try to end it quickly. So the best strategy for Jake Paul would be to get into that ring, dance around a little bit, run away from Mike Tyson, and try not to get knocked out. And now Mike's older, so he don't really have that same sort of stamina, right? So that's the only way that I see this fight going. What's gonna happen is it's gonna go the distance. You're not gonna see a knockout. You're not gonna see a mauling. You're not gonna see a brutalization. You're not gonna see any of that because it's an exhibition fight. Basically, what an exhibition fight is for show. You know what I'm saying? They're just out there going through the motions. They're not really fighting. It's a put on. I'm not going to say it's fake to disrespect the fighters, but it's basically, it's a fake fight. You know what I'm saying? There's no way that outside of an exhibition fight, a 57-year-old man should be fighting a 27-year-old man, you know, in a competitive fight. Are they going to pack it out in AT&T Stadium? Sure. Because on name value alone, Mike Tyson is a huge draw. To see him get back into the ring with somebody new. And Jake Paul is one of the biggest sensations in the boxing world. But if this were real, if this was not an exhibition fight and this was for real, if this was Mike Tyson back in the day when he was younger, right? Okay, Lisa saying age ain't nothing but a number. But yes, Lisa, but this is a competitive sport. When you're dealing with a competitive sport, Lisa, age does matter. You know what I'm saying? The fact that there is 20 years of difference between these men, it matters. You know what I'm saying? So people are hyped up because they're like, oh, he's Mike Tyson. He'll tear him up. He would have if he was younger. If they was both the same age, there's no way that Jake Paul would have agreed to this fight. He's agreeing to this fight because Tyson is old. You know what I'm saying? But if Tyson was young, if this was 1997 Tyson or 1989 Tyson, what I don't want to see happen was what happened in the 1980 fight between Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes, where Muhammad Ali was getting up there in age, and he got destroyed by Larry Holmes. And then Tyson, when he came into the game, he got revenge on Ford Muhammad on Larry Holmes by fucking Larry Holmes up later. And he even said that he watched that fight between Larry Holmes and Ali, and he felt bad for Ali. So he's like, yo, when I get older and I get into the boxing game, I'm gonna fight Larry Holmes and I'm gonna fuck Larry Holmes up, and that's what he eventually did. I don't want to see Mike Tyson get destroyed by Jake Paul. I don't know if he needs the money or what. You know what I mean? But people are getting hyped up because this is Mike Tyson. He was a beast in the ring. He was the most ferocious fighter of our generation. He was the person that brought people back to boxing. Lisa says she hopes that Mike Tyson gets. Yeah, I've seen it at least where he's getting real back in shape. I mean, he is still a beast. He is still a beast, but he's not the man he used to be. He hopes he gets mad and forgets it's an exhibition. Yeah. If he does, man, Jake Paul better watch out. You know what I'm saying? If he gets a flurry in him and Jake Paul's not, I don't know if Jake Paul's a fast fighter. Because like I said, I never really seen Jake Paul's fights because I look at Jake Paul as not a real fighter. You know what I'm saying? As Jake Paul, I don't keep up with the sport of boxing the way that I used to in the 90s, where I used to read Ring Magazine and everything, but he's not even in the rankings in his weight class for a heavyweight championship. Most people that are serious fight fans, they don't take him serious because he fights basketball players. He fights MMA fighters. He fights people that are not true contenders. Is he out there fighting the Canelo Alvarez's of the world, the Davises of the world, the Ryan Garcias of the world? Those fighters, they don't have notoriety because they're not. Unfortunately, the sport of boxing is not in vogue the way it used to be. You know what I mean? We don't know fighters the way that we used to know fighters, like in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, where people could name about 4 or 5 different fighters that were in their top weight classes that were good fighters. Boxing doesn't have that anymore. If you do know these people, you are a boxing fan. You're heavy into the sport. Most casuals will be viewing this Netflix fight. Lisa says people who are doubting Mike forget what Mike did to the guy in 2022. Talking about in the airport, Lisa. But that's not okay. Oh no, you're not talking about in the airport. You're talking about the Roy Jones fight, right? I think. Oh, the airplane. Yeah, the airport. Yeah, that's what I thought you were talking about. Okay. Yeah, but that's different. That's street fighting. We're talking about getting into the ring, competing. But yeah, it is, Lisa. It's street fighting. You can't compare street fighting to boxing. It's a different level of conditioning. Yeah, but the guy wasn't a professional fighter. I mean, it could be argued that Jake Paul is not a professional fighter either, but he's had fights. He's 21-1. He's a semi-professional fighter. You can't compare a regular guy on the street to a person who's a fighter. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's fought. Yeah, he still got it. No, man, he's gonna. I'm telling you, Lisa, this fight is gonna go the distance. This is gonna go 12 rounds. You know what I'm saying? This is gonna go the distance. I know it is because Netflix wants their money's worth. Because, like I said, casuals are gonna watch this fight. People that don't watch boxing, casual fans, are gonna watch this. You know what I mean? Not heavy boxing fans, they're gonna watch it too because again, boxing is like wrestling. Boxing is like wrestling. You got some events that casuals will watch, and some events that are the true heavy fan base will watch no matter what. They'll watch it just because it's boxing. The same thing is true of wrestling. And then with this, it's even better because you don't have to pay for this. You know what I mean? This is not pay per view. Netflix is trying something new out. As we know, Netflix will be getting the rights to Monday Night Raw in 2025, and they're trying to get concerts on Netflix now. Okay, you pay your Netflix fee, but what I'm saying, Lisa, is it's not the same thing as it would be for a regular boxing fight where you would have to shell out $50, $60. Okay, Netflix is trying to do live events now. They're trying to get concerts on Netflix. Of course, they're getting professional wrestling on Netflix with first Monday Night Raw, and then later on after 2026, the WWE Network is moving to Netflix. They're trying to get these live events, something that Netflix has never really done. They've never done live. They've done live events as far as comedy shows, but that's about it. They never really did these live event specials before. And this is good because this is good for the sport of boxing. This is drawing people back into boxing. That's one of the things that made boxing drop in popularity in recent decades was not just the popularity of the fighters. You know what I mean? Nobody to really draw the people in except for Floyd Mayweather. But also, the boxing became so expensive to watch. When boxing was boxing, especially before my time in the 70s, when you had Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and George Foreman. We talked about it on this channel before. We talked about the Foreman movie. In those days, everybody was basically a boxing fan because boxing was on network television. It was accessible to everybody. Now it's not. It hasn't been that way since the 80s. You know what I mean? And boxing pay-per-views became increasingly more expensive to watch. But this, everybody and their mother, everybody and their mother has Netflix. This is why WWE signed a deal with Netflix. Lisa's saying it's $12, so that's good. This is why WWE signed a deal with Netflix because it's the most popular streaming service in the world. It will make boxing's popularity go up. It will make one eventually. UFC has a model that's a stupid model. You got Disney; they're on Disney Plus, but you have to get Disney Plus. You have to have the subscription for Disney Plus first, and then you have to buy the pay-per-view separately. So you're paying for the subscription and the pay-per-view. That to me is a stupid model. That's a stupid pay model, and that to me is why UFC in recent years has decreased in popularity. You know what I mean? UFC is not, since they started doing that a couple of years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, UFC has decreased in popularity from where they were at, years ago. You know what I'm saying? A lot has to do with the fighters. Ronda Rousey's not there anymore. Conor McGregor's not there anymore. Brock Lesnar is not there anymore. The big fighters that Khabib, Nurmagomedov, the big draws in UFC, Just like boxing and just like wrestling, it's an individualist sport. It depends on these personalities. If these personalities aren't fighting anymore, then people won't pay to watch it, except for the hardcore fans. Hardcore fans, they don't really count because in boxing, wrestling, and MMA, hardcore fans will watch anything. They'll watch anything. Hardcore boxing fans will watch anything as long as it's boxing. Hardcore MMA will watch anything as long as it's MMA. And hardcore wrestling will watch anything as long as it's wrestling. But the casual viewer is is only going to shell out those big bucks or that money to pay for somebody that they know, somebody that has a reputation, somebody that they want to see get their ass kicked or they want to see win. Like we talked about a lot on this channel, boxing, wrestling, and MMA are the same business. They might be different sports, but they're the same business in terms of they put in two people, two women or two men, and people have to pay to see those two women or those two men compete against each other. So they have to have a vested interest in the personalities that are stepping into the ring or the octagon. If they don't, if it's two women or two men that nobody's ever heard of, nobody's going to watch that pay-per-view. It's different than hockey, baseball, football, or basketball because those are team sports and those are not sports where people pay to watch. If I wanted to follow every football game, I just turn on TV where the football's playing and I watch it. You know, I root for my team. Baseball, the same thing. Basketball, the same thing. Hockey, the same thing. With wrestling, boxing, I don't know, Lisa. With wrestling, boxing, and MMA, it depends on the personality of the person. It depends on are they a draw? It's like music. It's just like it's more like entertainment than it is sports because it's like music. If I don't like Beyonce, I'm not going to pay to see a Beyonce concert. If I don't like Drake, I'm not going to pay to see a Drake concert. It's just like that with boxing and MMA and wrestling. The personality matters. Do I want to pay? Do I want to shell out money to see this person either get fucked up or to see this person fuck somebody else up? And Mike Tyson is a huge draw. And Jake Paul, the only difference between the three is, of course, MMA and boxing are real sports, and wrestling is a storyline. You know what I mean? But other than that, they all three are basically the same. You know, the same business model. So Netflix is dipping their toe in the water before their deal with WWE gets into a full effect. And they want to see maybe they'll have a deal where this will work out and they'll get more boxing content on there. And then they'll get UFC content on there when their deal with ESPN/Disney Plus is up. I mean, what? Like I said, the UFC Disney Plus deal is bullshit. You know? You know what I mean? A lot of fans don't like it. They're like, I already got to pay for the Disney Plus app and I got to pay for the pay-per-view separately. That's bullshit. You know? But maybe since WWE is moving to Netflix, maybe UFC will move to Netflix too after 2026. Who knows? Lisa says, how come Jake Paul doesn't fight somebody in his own age range? Because he's not a real fighter. He's a sideshow act. Him and his brother. The brother stopped fighting. Now the brother is in WWE. He's doing a lot with WWE. In fact, he's the first guy to ever have an official sponsorship with WWE with his energy drink. Come WrestleMania 40, Logan Paul will have his energy drink on the canvas. Now, this is something new for WWE on the mat. WWE usually doesn't do this. You'll watch a WWE pay per view, and you'll never see like you watch a boxing pay per view. You see like Corona beer or Budweiser beer sponsoring it, and it's written on the mat. You'll watch a UFC pay per view. They get sponsored by Monster Energy Drink, and it's written on the mat. WWE has under Vince McMahon. He never allowed that. They had sponsors, but the sponsors would have, you know, they will be sponsored by M&M Mars or Snickers or Slim Jim or whatever. But he wouldn't allow the sponsor to write their logo on the ring. You know what I mean? But since he's no longer in the company and he's out of the company because of what happened, now Logan Paul has inked a deal with Prime Energy Drink. So these two guys, Logan and Jake, one is taking over the boxing world, the other is taking over the wrestling world. You know, Logan Paul originally started off in boxing as well. He hasn't had a boxing fight in a while. But they don't fight somebody in their own age range, Lisa. He don't, because he's not a good fighter. This all started off as a joke, something for them to do, and it has drawn a lot of eyeballs to boxing, eyeballs that weren't in boxing before. A different, younger fan base of boxing because boxing's fan base is old. You know what I mean? Boxing's fan base is like mostly men and men in their 40s, 40s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. A very old fan base when it comes to boxing and a very uh, immigrant. Uh, no, a very immigrant fan base. Like Cinco de Mayo comes around, boxing promoters love Cinco de Mayo because a lot of the boxing fans are Mexican and Mexican American, and like they'll put Canelo Alvarez in there, they'll put some other Hispanic fighter, a lot of Hispanic fighters. But when it comes to the American fan base, other than Deontay Wilder, we don't really have you know big name boxers like we used to have. You know what I mean? In fact, Mike Tyson is the last great American heavyweight that people even know. The smaller fighters, people like the smaller guys because their fights are more exciting, their fights are more fast paced. But the average American viewer of boxing loves and remembers and knows the heavyweight. Uh, the heavyweight fighters. You know what I mean? The Mike Tysons, the Muhammad Ali's, the George Foreman's, the Rocky Marcianos, the Sonny Listons, the Floyd Pattersons, the Joe Lewis's, the Joe Frazier's, the, those fighters from back in the day that were heavyweights. The average boxing fan, Mayweather and Pacquiao got a lot of views, got a lot of buys back then in 2015 because they hyped it up so much. And then Mayweather and Conor McGregor, which was this Mayweather and Conor McGregor in 2017. I'll never forget it because it was my birthday. The day it happened, August 26th, 2017. UFC had just inked the $1 billion deal with William Morris Entertainment, and Conor McGregor was making history, being the first MMA fighter to fight in a boxing ring. And this is, other than Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather, this is the most purging, most purchased boxing fight in decades. So they had to get an MMA fighter to cross over into boxing in order to get pay per view buys. So they tried it again in 2021 with Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather. We talked about that fight. And we all remember how that fight went. They just went the distance. It was basically an exhibition fight. Nobody got hurt. Nobody won. Lisa says, would they ever do Jake Paul? Lisa says, would they ever do Jake Paul against a female? No, I hope not, Lisa. I wouldn't. I never want to see. Now I know there's going to be some people that are going to say talk about feminism and equality and all that. I never want to see a female boxer boxing against a man or a female MMA fighter fighting against a man. If I ever see that, I will never support that. Men should not hit women, not even in sport. Wrestling, that's something different. We talked about that. Wrestling is a work. The object of wrestling is to protect your opponent, not to hurt them. So seeing intergender matches, although aesthetically it might look wrong, even that looks kind of fucked up, but we know it's not real. You know what I'm saying? We know it's not. It's a controlled environment. So even though it looks fucked up, still I'm not completely against it. Like when a couple of years ago, Tessa Blanchard won the TNA World Title, and people were against. People were like, "Oh, how can you have intergender matches?" But I wasn't against it because, again, wrestling is something different. But boxing and MMA, no, I'm against that. I'm even against trans women boxing. So I hope and fighting in the octagon against men. Keep the male fighters separated and the female fighters separated, and weight classes also separated. You know what I mean? I don't want to see like people say, "Oh well, Mayweather going against Muhammad Ali." Muhammad Ali was a heavyweight. Mayweather is a lightweight. You know what I mean? You have to keep it as fair as possible when it comes to things like this. Lisa says boxing is a dying sport. Yeah, it is. I don't know. Let me look that up, Lisa. That's an interesting question. I was thinking not, but let me look it up to make sure. No, I, I, that's how you know this fight is bullshit too. Jake Paul is a cruiserweight, and cruiserweight. Uh, nah, Jake's a cruiserweight, so he's lighter than Tyson. But again, this is not for contendership. This is just for an exhibition. So they're not, I guess they're gonna let it slide. But I mean, I don't know. But as far as the female MMA or boxing, nah, I would never want to see that. I wouldn't even want to see Clarissa Shield, who is the greatest female boxer alive right now, under undefeated. I think you know she Clarissa Shields, she challenged Layla Ali, and Layla Ali said no because she's old and Clarissa Shield is young, and Layla uh, doesn't want to happen to her what happened to her father. An older boxer does not want to. You never lose that love. You never lose that desire to want to get back in there. And it's in your blood, boxing. You know what I mean? But you have to be smart about it. You know, a lot of times boxers don't save their money. You know, so they go broke and they have no choice but to get back in the ring when they're older. But if they were smart and they saved their money and they don't need to get back in the ring when they get a certain age, they shouldn't. The shelf life of a boxer is about 10, 15 years at the most. An MMA fighter, the same thing. Uh, they don't have a huge shelf life. They don't have a huge career. So the best thing to do is get in there, fight a couple of big fights, win a couple of big fights if you're good enough, and then save your money and get out because of CTE, brain damage, things of that nature. Yep. That female boxer that I talked about, at least Clarissa Shield, that challenged Layla Ali a couple of years ago. She has 14 fights and she's won all 14. So she's undefeated. She recently crossed over into MMA, becoming the first boxer to do so. Because all these, um, yeah, she's African American at least. All these all these fighters, she wanted to fight Amanda Nunes, who recently Amanda Nunes, who was the women's UFC champion in her weight division. And Clarissa, I give her credit because Clarissa was the only MMA fighter, man or woman, that is willing to step into the octagon. Other MMA fighters, they want to fight boxers. I mean, other boxers say they're willing to fight MMA fighters, but they want the MMA fighter to fight in boxing, right? Tyson Fury fought Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou had to cross over into boxing. Mayweather fought Conor McGregor. Uh, McGregor had to cross over into boxing. Clarissa Shields is the only boxer that said, you know what? Give me time. I'll train. I'll go into your world. I'll establish a reputation in your world, and I'll step in your world. Just give me time to train, familiarize myself with the differences between boxing and MMA. Obviously, there are some differences. There are a lot of differences. Boxing is just punching, and MMA is a lot more other disciplines mixed together. It has boxing in it, but it's more than boxing. It's wrestling, it's jiu-jitsu, it's Muay Thai, it's basically a lot of other stuff. So it takes time. But other boxers, MMA fighters have challenged them, yo, step into the octagon, step into my world. And the boxers have always pushed out, and the boxers have always said, no, you want to fight, you got to become a boxer, and you got to step into my world and make your boxing rules. So I give her credit for the only one to do it. A couple of years ago, she had a press conference with Amanda Nunes, and she called out Amanda Nunes. But she said, I'll step into your world and I'll fight you in the octagon. You don't have to step into the ring. Other, like I said, Tyson Fury called out Francis Ngannou, said he's better than Francis Ngannou, but Tyson Fury wouldn't step into the octagon. Mayweather wouldn't step into the octagon. They're they're afraid of the octagon. They're afraid to fight in MMA. They want the boxer to go to them. They don't want to go to the boxer. I mean, James Toney, a famous boxer, stepped into the UFC. He fought in the UFC years ago, when like in the early 2000s, but he was already retired, and he's the only guy to do so. But as far as a boxer at the top of their game, like only Clarissa Shields, she's done it. She's crossed over into MMA, so you got to give her credit. Other, this isn't gonna watch the fight. Yeah, I'll be watching it. But I mean, like I said, Jake Paul better be lucky that his this is in 25 years ago. Mike Tyson would have destroyed him, ate him for lunch. I mean, your boy's not a real boxer. He's another example. Picking up on MMA fighters. Most of the people that he's beaten they're old, number one. I mean, during his heyday in the early 2000s, Anderson Silva, who Jake Paul fought, was one of the greatest MMA fighters, if not the greatest during his time period of an MMA fighter. But by the time he fought Jake Paul, he was old by then. Ben Askren, the same thing. A basketball player, the first time Jake Paul ever stepped into the ring, he fought an exhibition fight against a basketball player. Now, I'm not saying anything against basketball players. They're great athletes, but it's not a physical sport. It's not a combat sport. Basketball players don't know how to fight like that. It's one of the least combative sports next to baseball that there is. You're better off fighting a football player. At least they have more experience with physical contact. Physical contact. You know what I mean? The only thing he hasn't fought is a wrestler, which his brother has. You know, or another comedian. He started off in this celebrity boxing realm. Remember celebrity boxing, at least, where you would have like Joey Buttafuoco, a normal guy versus China, or you'd have normal people go in there and just put a pair of boxing gloves on and just start punching. You know what I mean? That's where Jake Paul and his brother started off as a joke, and it was sponsored by Triller. Uh, this because technically boxing is like wrestling or like dancing or like anything else. It's a physical combat. It's a physical activity. It's a sport, but it's technically something that anybody can do. The rules are not complicated. You just get in there, you put on boxing gloves, but anybody can do it. It's like singing. I can sing. Lisa can sing. We all can sing. If you can talk, you can sing. But can you sing well? Can you do that activity well? No. If you sound like shit, nobody's gonna to pay to see you, because anybody can put on a pair of boxing gloves and start punching, but that's not really boxing. That's not the sweet science, as they call it. That's just punching. You know, that's where Jake Paul and them started off, and they were sponsored by Triller, and all this started like in 2020, where people were trying to get new entertainment options. You know what I mean? Just like the verses and music, because you didn't have a lot of entertainment, but you still have boxing, you still had MMA, and you still had wrestling. But the major boxing promotions weren't putting on fights, so these guys took an opportunity, and that's when they became really big on social media. But they never really fought anybody, any type of real reputation. Joke fights they fought. I think Jake Paul is like his brother. People like that are more fitted for WWE. You know what I mean? Where they can appear to be tough. They can be booked to be tough. You know what I mean? They can book to be tough guys. They're great performers, they're great personalities, but they're not tough guys. You know what I mean? They're not real fighters. Not in the way that a Mike Tyson is, or Mike Tyson was, or some of the greater fighters that we've known throughout history. Not the same thing. But anyway, I'll be watching this fight, and I'm sure a lot of other people will. Social media is going to be lit up when that does happen. Same thing that it is for every other Jake Paul fight. Because, see, with Jake Paul, guys, people hate him so much that they pay to see him get his ass kicked. You know, they pay to see him get his ass kicked. That's what they're really paying for. They want to see him get his ass kicked because they hate him because he's annoying. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm sure like every other fighter, he has his fans out there, but the majority of people that I know are paying, will be paying attention and paying their Netflix subscriptions in this fight to see this man get destroyed. And that's the hook to this fight. That Mike Tyson was such a predator, such an animal back in the day, that they're hoping that he's the Mike Tyson of old and that he'll just destroy Jake Paul. But if Jake Paul destroys him, that'll be exactly, Lisa. Lisa says, yeah, all the comments she's seen about the fight, everybody wants Tyson to win and they don't just want him to win, Lisa. Like you're saying, understand what Lisa's saying, and it's true. They don't just want Jake Paul to lose the fight. They want to see Jake Paul get destroyed, get his ass kicked, get his ass annihilated. That's really what they want to see. So if this fight goes the distance and this fight is some bullshit where Jake Paul's getting most of the hits in and Mike's not really being Mike, that will turn people away from Netflix boxing. They'll say, "Ah, fuck that." You know, the next fight that Netflix puts on between two fighters, they're gonna be like, "I'm not gonna watch that because that's not what I want to see. That's not satisfying." You know, and it, and there's no way you could really rig it to the point where that does happen unless they pay Jake Paul a tremendous amount of money to just basically stand there and put as minimal effort as he can in and let Tyson just beat on his ass. Right. People hate this guy. I mean, this guy is despised. I don't really know why, because I don't pay attention to his content. I cover him and his brother when they fight or when they wrestle, but I don't know what it is, why the hate. You know, why is he so hated? You know. Sean says Tyson for the win. I don't know why he's so hated though. You know what I mean? Like, what does he do that gets on people's nerves like that? You know? Because to me, I haven't seen him do anything on his channel. You know what I mean? That would justify people wanting to see him get his ass kicked like that. You know what I mean? Like, especially putting him in the ring with Mike Tyson. You know, I mean, I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe he pissed somebody off by doing some kind of shenanigans. Okay, Lisa says when he was on. Yeah, I figured that. Was he the type to do pranks? You know, because a lot of them prank channels uh, that were on the late 2000, mid to late 2010s, they used to piss me off. And if I could have seen one of them get fucked up by Mike Tyson, I would have paid money to see it. You know? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, this fight is gonna get huge ratings because Mike Tyson is old school. He knows how to hype up fights. He knows how to make it personal. You know what I mean? He puts his spice in there. Yes, Sean, we talked about that earlier. You jumped on. Nah, yeah. Sean, I don't know why uh, you rejected your message. Yeah. Um, Sean is correct. We talked about that earlier. This is going to be Netflix first live event. I think they have done comedy before, but as far as like a truly live event where you're watching it like you'll be watching television, this is going to be the first time they're ever doing something like this. And they're getting ready. They're getting ready for that the changeover in 2020 in 25. They'll be carrying the WWE's content. They're getting ready to be a live channel. You know what I mean? With live content. You know, we've seen the evolution of Netflix over the years. I remember Netflix when you used to have to uh, when you would get movies and you would get them in the mail and then they would send them to you in the mail and you would have to send them back. you know, you know, as rentals, and then later in the 2010s they expanded to have their own content with shows like Orange is the New Black, which was one of their first original shows. But those are sitcoms and everything. You know what I mean? Now they're expanding to live events. So it's really becoming somewhat of a phenomenon. And they're trying it out. You know what I mean? They're trying it out with this. This will be first. This is in July. This will be before their deal with WWE goes into effect. You know what I mean? So they're trying this out. So let's see the kind of ratings this does. Big news, guys. And you got to remember, it's not just the United States; it's all over the world. This is happening. You know, this is being brought. This is being beamed to. And one of the biggest arenas too, one of the biggest stadiums, AT&T Stadium, a stadium event. You know what I mean? So, you know, in coming years, they'll be having WrestleManias on Netflix. So they want to see how this kind of event broadcast on a live stream feed. You know what I mean? So it's basically a test run for them to see how they do in this kind of a market. Huge, huge stuff for Netflix. Lisa says in 2020, Jake was charged with criminal trespassing and unlawful assembly by police during a riot, and after that, people hated him because he didn't get the charge of the things like he was involved with. Okay, yeah, well, that's just white privilege. Yeah, Sean is bringing up. Sean is bringing up something that. Yeah, Lisa's bringing up something too that I thought about too. First, to address Sean's point, um, that's something I thought about too when when the negotiations for WWE and Netflix uh, were first being talked about. I'm like, what what does this mean for the Netflix subscriptions now? You know what I mean? They're gonna got to go up a lot because they're gonna have a lot more content. Now they're doing live content. You know, what used to be called pay per view back in our days, when we were growing up in the '90s. You know, now they call them premium live events. Now the prices for them will skyrocket. And you know, last year or so, they cracked down on password sharing. And Lisa's bringing up Netflix is going to break that day. Yes, as you recall, when there's heavy traffic on the internet, I'll give you two examples. Healthcare.org is probably the biggest example. When they first launched um, the Obama healthcare thing back in 2012, that crashed. But as far as entertainment, when WWE first launched their network in 2014, I couldn't get on to the network for like 2 or 3 days because the traffic was so heavy. And likewise, when Disney Plus first launched in 2019, it was the same thing because everybody knew that that was the launch day for those two specific streaming networks, and everybody and their mother set up subscriptions for that day. You know, I couldn't watch them until like 2 or 3 days later. I remember WWE Network was first because that was the first time ever there was a streaming network specifically devoted to one type of content. They saw the future, that the future was not in television, the WWE did, and they moved to Netflix. I mean, they moved to, yeah, Netflix now, but I mean, they moved to streaming, you know? And now, like Sean is saying, Netflix is going to go up. Netflix price, because once they see these pay per views are going to be big, and once they see the pay per views are getting premium live events, whatever they're calling them now, I'm calling pay per views because I grew up in the '80s and '90s. That's what I call them. Once they see these pay per views, events are going up high. Once they see that, and they get a lot of boxing and wrestling and UFC content, they're gonna be like, oh, well, why should we make them pay the same price that they're paying for just a regular Netflix? Now they got to throw in a little extra in order to get the Tyson fight, or in order to get the Tyson fight, or in order to get the UFC fight, in order to get the the WrestleMania. You know what I mean? They got to throw in a little extra, not just their regular Netflix subscription fee. Now they want these big events. They got to do a little extra, and the price gonna go up high. Because I'm telling you, that's the future. Now that WWE and UFC are the same company, they're under the TKO brand. Disney Plus that UFC is partnered with now, they don't have the they don't have the kind of subscription based audience that Netflix has. Peacock that WWE is partnered with, they don't have this. They don't have that. They put their events on. Peacock don't have the kind of uh, notoriety and fame that Netflix has. Netflix is number one when it comes to streaming. Netflix is synonymous with streaming. People know Netflix. So boxing, wrestling, and UFC, especially wrestling and UFC, because WWE's is under the same umbrella with UFC. You know what I mean? So they're like, okay, they're our brothers with Netflix, we're gonna be with Netflix too. Then boxing's gonna see that, and boxing gonna say, well, we're gonna put our stuff on Netflix also. Other bigger championship fights besides this one. You know what I mean? World heavyweight title fights and whatever. And that's gonna make Netflix price rise to astronomical levels. You know what I mean? Because no cap, Netflix's movies and series are not that great. You know what I mean? They're not. They're better than other streaming services. Amazon Prime is, you know, their movies are not that good either. HBO Max is shitty, but even HBO Max, they want live content. They've been in talks with AEW. See, when you want live content, the best thing to go to is wrestling and boxing. Wrestling and boxing, and then later MMA. When MMA came out after 1993, that made pay per view. That was really what made pay per view. They tried concerts on pay per view years ago. Like I'm talking about in the early 90s and the 80s when pay per view first came out. They tried concerts on pay per view, like David Hasselhoff had a concert or whatever. I think some other artists had concerts I can't recall. But concerts never really panned out on pay per view. So the bread and butter for pay per view was became boxing, wrestling, and MMA because that was the only way that you could see those things. I mean, yeah, wrestling you could watch it on TV, the Nitros, the Raws, the Smackdowns, all that stuff week to week. But if you wanted to see how the storyline ends and you wanted to see the climax, you had to buy it on pay per view, right? So in boxing, you couldn't see it on TV. It never aired on TV. You had to have it, pay per view. Same thing. MMA, same thing. You know what I mean? So they're mo- they're moving away from pay per view. Lisa says they need to start putting concerts because the way these prices are getting, I can't afford to see anybody. Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, well, yeah, that'd be a cool idea. I always thought, well, I know Jay Z's streaming service Title, he put on Summer Jam a couple of years ago on his streaming service. I watched the Summer Jam. Summer Jam would be a good idea to to put on a streaming service, to watch. You know what I mean? Some big concert that involves a lot of people. You know what I mean? Not just one or two whatever artists. That'd be a good idea. to put on there. Comedy specials have forever been on. They've switched to live stream for a while now. I know Kevin Hart had a deal with Netflix, his comedy special. But hey, as Cat Williams said, Cedric the Entertainer couldn't even get a live special on Tubi. Why don't Tubi needs to get some of these fights? You know, put some of the lesser known boxers and wrestlers and MMA fighters on Tubi. It's free. Tubi will get that local that local person from your hood that's having a fight, you know, with another person, bootleg version. Yeah, Tubi. I don't know about that at least because some Tubi. I mean, Tubi does have like I give Tubi credit. Their collection of old movies, as far as like I watched The Temptations, I watched the Bobby DeBarge movie on Netflix. I mean, on Tubi that came out in 2019. That Irv Gotti produced. So I seen some good stuff on Tubi. So I'm not saying that they don't have good stuff, but if uh, if you can't afford Netflix and chill, then you're just gonna have to settle for Tubi and Doomy. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Put it that way. But yeah, Sean is absolutely right. The price of Netflix is going to skyrocket within the next 5 or 6 years because even when it comes to movies in the theaters, people are not going to see movies in the theaters the way that they used to go and see movies in the theaters. Lisa and I just recently went to see a Bob Marley movie, One Love, and that shit was not packed. You know what I mean? Because streaming services have vanished. I mean, streaming services not have vanished. Streaming services have taken over since 2020. So this is the new wave. This is the new era that we're living in. The era of Netflix live events. They're dipping their toe in the water. They'll be getting WWE content 2025. In 2026, their deal with Peacock expires. The deal that UFC has with Disney Plus slash ESPN Plus expires in 2026. I think they'll be moving to Netflix. Disney Plus, they could have been on a level with Netflix if they wouldn't have dropped the ball with their original series. The reason why their subscription base dropped in heavy rotation was because they dropped the ball when it came. Yeah, Tubi. Yeah, forget Netflix and chill. Tubi and Doomy is if you got a budget and you can't afford Netflix, Tubi's the way to go. You know? So remember, if y'all balling on a budget, Tubi is where you need to be. Forget about HBO Max, forget about Disney Plus, forget about Netflix or Amazon Prime, Tubi. So if Netflix is successful with their boxing, and then later their wrestling, and later their mixed martial arts, other streaming services will want to pick other streaming services will want to pick up on that, and they'll want, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying, Sean. They do old school movies, The Temptations. I watched, like I said, they got Straight Outta Compton on there, Above the Rim, all the Tupac movies, the Biggie movie, old school hood movies that you don't really hear about anymore that we grew up with in the '90s. Tubi got them. Tubi got all that shit on lock. Netflix don't really fuck with shit like that. Tubi reaches out to a consumer base that Netflix doesn't reach out to. You know, a demographic that Netflix doesn't reach out to. You know what I mean? And a lot of some of the original movies that I'm talking about, not the old school movies that are just exclusive to Tubi, they might not be the best actors. You know what I'm saying? They need work, but their plot lines are good. You know, but other streaming services will want to capitalize on this. So look for this to be the future. All these streaming services trying to get exclusive rights to live events. So if Netflix is in the deal with UFC and WWE under the umbrella of TKO Entertainment now, uh, Amazon Prime will want to get in the deal with, or HBO Max with AEW or some other wrestling group and company that we never heard of, or some other boxing promotion that we never heard of. And all these streaming services going to try to get live events because people don't have the money to be going out of their way to pay for live events to go see them or to watch them on pay per view. You know what I mean? First of all, people are getting rid of cable. You know what I mean? So this is the future, guys. Like I said, Disney Plus would have been big, and they would have had a lot more subscribers if they wouldn't have dropped the ball with their original programming. Their original programming, Disney Plus, they have a lot of good archives for old school Disney movies, but they don't have good live event shows. I mean, they don't have live event shows at all, but they don't have original content. The original content sucks. You know what I mean? Cruella Deville, that movie, one of the worst movies ever made. Um, The Mandalorian, it was good for 3 seasons and then it sucked afterwards. Um, Everything else that they try to do, they failed. You know what I mean? All them like they tried to do something where in 2020 where they released Milan, and this is what they tried to use the model. Right? Sean is saying soon he thinks movie theaters will be no more. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case, and I say unfortunately because I mean people are like, oh well, you want to pay more to see a movie when you know whatever, but for some movies, for the big movies like Fast and the Furious or a big franchise movie, like if you're a comic book fan, like Black Panther or whatever, right? Or a Star Wars fan or whatever. See those big movies with a lot of special effects. Those movies are better in the theaters than watching them in your home. I feel like that's just my opinion, but I'm old school. You know what I'm saying? It took a while for me to get used to streaming when it came to music. Streaming when it came to music for years, even if I even if I had LimeWire or Napster or Kazaa back in the day, I didn't really want to download music online, and all my friends were doing it, but I would still want to buy the CD because I'm just old school like that. So after a while, I'm like, you know what? Nobody's doing that no more. And then Views came out, Drake's album, around like 2016 ish, and that changed the game. After that, that brought streaming to the mainstream. You know what I mean? And nobody buys albums anymore. Look how things changed when it came to that. You know what I mean? So everything now is done on computers or smartphones. Nothing is done in person anymore. You know what I'm saying? Slowly but surely, that stuff is fading away. Like people talk about, like this is totally off topic, but people talk about in the music industry, oh, Drake, has more streams than Michael Jackson, or Taylor Swift has more streams than Michael Jackson, right? But we're judging it differently now. We're talking about streams versus actually getting off your ass and buying, well, in first a tape and then a CD. You know what I mean? So things have changed. You know what I mean? So Sean's absolutely right. They tested it in 2020 when we were all in COVID to see how good movies do. And Disney dropped the ball because what Disney tried to do, like I was saying with Mulan, when Disney tried to do the Mulan remake, what Disney tried to do was the same thing they do with UFC. Okay, yeah, you have the streaming service, you have the app, the Disney Plus app, but you gotta pay for the app, and we're gonna make you pay extra just to watch this content, like you would in the theaters. And people were like, what? You know what I mean? I'm already paying for the app. Why I gotta pay extra I gotta pay for the app and the content too? Bullshit. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of deal they have with UFC, and that's what they try to do with their movies, and that didn't work. That Mulan movie flopped because of that. I mean, it flopped too because they didn't have Eddie Murphy's character in it. But one of the main reasons why that movie flopped was because Disney tried to be slick and say we're gonna make them pay theater price and pay for the app at the same time. Like they're seeing it live, and people were like, "Nah, I'm good on that." You know what I'm saying? Uh, I'm not. I don't want to watch. I don't want to have to pay for the app and the movie. You know what I mean? And I fear that if this Netflix thing is successful, that Netflix might try that too. Netflix might try to make you pay for the app of Netflix and the event too. You know, what I mean, I fear that that may happen with WrestleMania. I've been telling WWE fans that this is where they're headed. You know, what I mean, since the merger, since 2023, y'all so used to paying the Peacock price or the WWE Network price for pay per views, $9.99. Eventually, what's gonna happen is they're gonna make y'all shell out back in the day, you know, those old pay per view prices, plus the app that you're watching it on, whether it be Peacock or Netflix or whatever, especially if it's Netflix. Now I see it headed down that direction. I know Disney would have done that. If Disney would have purchased the rights to WWE and the WWE's content, that's what Disney would have done. You know what I mean? Because that's what Disney does with UFC, and that's what they try to do with their movies. But it didn't work out with their movies because those live action movies, people not interested in seeing them anyway. You know, in theaters. Mulan flopped. Lion King 2, Lion King remake flopped. Little Mermaid flopped. People are not interested in seeing that. You know, and now Disney is suffering because of that. So if Netflix thinks that's the way to go, then Netflix will fail too at this experiment that they're doing because nobody's paying for the app, going to be paying for the app and the event at the same time. I'm either paying for the app and I get to see everything included on the app, including the event or the movie, or I'm not paying for the app, or I'm not paying for the app. For that, I'll just buy the pay per view by itself separately, or I'll watch the movie separately. I think when it comes to movies too, Sean, they're suffering the same thing like boxing and wrestling and MMA is suffering. Is that there's no big movie stars anymore. There's no big people that will draw you into to see a movie. You know, the era of the movie star is passe. People know these franchises, and people might know like okay, like Chris Hemsworth. He's pretty well known, but Chris Hemsworth, outside of his Thor costume, if Chris Hemsworth were to walk down the street right now, a lot of people wouldn't know who he is outside of his Thor costume. Chris Evans, the same thing that plays Mr. America in the Marvel MCU. People wouldn't know who they are outside of their costume. Now he puts on the Mr. America costume, Captain America costume, people will know who he is. You put the other guy puts on the Thor costume, they, they will know Robert Downey Jr. People will know him as Iron Man, but they wouldn't know him as Robert Downey Jr. in any other movie. You know what I mean? So uh, it's not like it was before. You know what I'm saying? Where you had famous movie stars, Denzel Washington, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. These movie stars would draw you in to want to watch the movie. I want to watch this movie because so and so is starring in it. It's not like that anymore. There's no big draws in the theaters, and there's no originality. Everything is a remake. Everything is a sequel. Everything is a prequel. Like Lisa and I went to see the Bob Marley movie, and it was like there was the part two to the Ghostbusters that they put out in 2021 with the kid from Stranger Things, and that wasn't even good. You know what I mean? An old ass Bill Murray and old ass Dan Aykroyd, nobody wants to see that. You know what I'm saying? All these old prequels, sequels, and reboots. Come on, enough of that already. You know what I mean? People want to see original content. And that's what these streaming services are giving them, original content, different stories. Hollywood is not giving them that. You know, you can only rely on old school so much before people start to say, you know what, I want to see something different. But anyway, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see my next video is coming out. Love you guys. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing. Thank you, Sean, for contributing. All of y'all are contributing and watching. And we got to see this fight, man. See if the fight's going to be worth the price of admission. Peace.